Seemingly when it rains, it pours a little bit for Xbox, and I can understand Xbox fans' frustration poking out a little bit because I feel frustrated myself with this news. It's just one of those things where a lot of people are going to sort of, take this thing one way or the other. And, for me anyway, I honestly think that it's just one of those things where Microsoft kind of maybe bit off more than they could chew or whatever. Like, we don't know, and we might not ever know the full story unless somebody has the inside scoop and writes about it. But think about this for a second. At one point, Xbox Series X was going to get a redesign called Xbox Brooklyn. It was going to be like a cylinder shape, 2 terabyte. It was going to come with a new haptic controller called Sibyl. And, the hardware got canceled. The Xbox portable handheld was getting made, and that got canceled. That was going to play our actual Xbox games from our console library, and that got canceled. So, again, you have hardware being canceled. You have them going in an extremely niche direction with the Magnus, where it's just basically a PC. And now you have, the one, I think, bright spot was people were saying that exclusivity was going to be pointless. But now we have Sony saying, hey, we're going to just do exclusives again when it comes to our single-player games. It's going to be only on PlayStation. So you have an incredible reason to pick up a PlayStation. Like, say you were on the fence of picking up a PlayStation for GTA 6. And you were like, well, do I really want to pick it up for one game? But now, Wolverine, Venom, Galactic, Ghost of Yotei, Astrobot, which won Game of the Year. All these games that they have coming up. And it's crazy to me that, that now they're kind of doing that. And Microsoft has already kind of way overshot themselves with the lack of exclusives and going to PC and stuff like that. So yeah, I do find it to be extremely interesting the way that things have kind of worked out. But I do want to get into this news because I do find it to be even worse than I thought. Because a lot of us were like, okay, well, Xbox didn't really need to come out with a mid-gen refresh, but it's so crazy to me because, I have the Pro, and I think the Pro is just absolutely amazing, and now it's getting even better because there's a PSSR upgrade that's going to be released in the coming weeks, but it's available now in Resident Evil Requiem. So if you didn't know, Resident Evil Requiem just came out, and while the game is good on all consoles, the Pro just is supercharged, across the board. We're talking amazing. So the PS5 Pro endured a turbulent first year on the market, occasionally turning in exceptional results, but often disappointing or average ones as well. Resident Evil Requiem bucks the trend with a benchmark showing that's, according to tech experts Digital Foundry, head and shoulders ahead of all other consoles. It's what you'd expect from such an expensive piece of hardware, but hasn't always been the case. John Linneman points out that while the supercharged system goal was to deliver 30 FPS quality modes at 60 FPS levels, Capcom's efforts go far beyond that here. The game's main 60 FPS mode includes transformative ray tracing and an upscaling solution so good it looks close to native 4K resolution under the microscope. While there are some very minor issues with low reflection noise, we're talking about exemplary image quality here at almost a flawless 60 frames per second with ray tracing. Now, people, this is why I got the Pro in the first place, right? Because we might be stuck with these consoles for, another couple of years or whatever, and so you obviously want to be able to kind of get the most out of them and things like that. So, yeah, I do think that the first year of the Pro stuff, I didn't even use my PlayStation 5 Pro last year, right? I got another one for the other room this year, and I've been using that one a ton, and it's just amazing. But, I'll be the first to admit, the first year of the Pro probably wasn't exactly, the best. But here's the interesting thing. There's also a 120 frames option, which is impressive in its own right. This matches the image quality of the base PS5. So ray tracing is disabled and you use the fancy upscaling technology mentioned, but performance is sturdy enough to make an adequate alternative with VRR enabled. Digital Foundry also notes that the sheer quality of assets, including the character models and texture details, make this among the best looking games ever released. Capcom's ARP team, when empowered by the Resident Evil engine, has been at the top of its game for a while, but this is shaping up to be some of its best work ever. And don't worry if you're a base PS5 owner, because performance and visual quality at 60 FPS is still exceptional there too. It's just the upscaling and ray tracing of the Pro version take the presentation to an entirely different dimension. So the PS5 Pro is categorically the best place to play Resident Evil Requiem, but then you can't really go wrong with any console. Capcom's done some staggeringly good work here. So here's the thing that I would say: if you're an Xbox fan, like, this is bad news, because the Xbox Series X was kind of doing pretty good work in comparison to the Pro. And the PSSR 1, you know, was a little bit lackluster, but now they're implementing this second one, and 2.0 looks like it's going to be incredible, because I can say that Resident Evil does look absolutely stunning, and maybe the best looking game that I've seen. It's hard to really say, but I think that's a big problem for Xbox, because you've got to go further more years with, you know, going with just what you have. And I think that makes them look pretty bad. So after promising the same last year, Sony announced that this PlayStation PSSR upgrade is coming very soon. It'll be coming in the coming weeks for PS5 Pro owners, and represents the fruits of PlayStation's AMD partnership through Project Amethyst, which PC players have noticed in AMD FSR 4. Resident Evil Requiem, out now, is the first title to support it, with Sony claiming that it helps keep both frame rate and image quality high. Regarding its benefits, especially with a new hair tech, Capcom's senior manager, engine development support section, explained how. He says, so when you see light passing through hair or strands folding over each other, they'll look even crisper than on a regular PS5. As for the future, multiple existing titles will be upgraded to support the new PSSR via software update. Once installed, you can select enhanced PSSR quality for titles that support the tech on the Pro, and should ideally result in noticeably crisper graphics. So again, like, and this is what I'm saying: if you can get this with the PS5 Pro, like this is like, that's why I said it was stupid for Microsoft to try to go with this expensive hardware for next generation, like something that's going to cost people $1,200 to $1,500 or more, right? Because of the diminishing returns, and you can get more out of stuff like PSSR. Like, you should be relying a little bit more on that type of stuff to get the most out of your machine, without having to have, you know, everything and like the horsepower wise under it. But Microsoft's forced to go with that because they're using full Windows, which is full of bloat and everything. So you literally have to kind of have all this stuff, you know, ready to go. And, you know, so I really do think that this is a big problem for Microsoft, because Microsoft has not realistically, you know, how these things have kind of rolled out. You know, it's a little bit strange to me, but I do think that Sony is in a much better place, you know, than Microsoft, in terms of where they are with their hardware right now, where they are with their games. And Microsoft is just out there trying to, you know, speak to anyone who will listen, kind of speaking to the, or whatever, you know, like, hey, we're going to try and change, we're going to try and do this. But they really are in a bad spot, because it doesn't even look like they're making their own consoles right now, and it looks like we're at least a year and a half, maybe 2.5 years before we see something from them. And if it's just that PC, then, you know, you have to wonder if that's even going to matter. You know, like, I personally don't think it would. And, you know, that's going to be bad news for Microsoft. So, yeah, you know, I do find it to be a weird situation that we find ourselves in. But I also think that, you know, Microsoft can definitely buy themselves some time. You know, fire up those burners, man. Get them Xboxes cranked out. Start advertising. Drop the price low. You know what I mean? Not even back to the original price, but drop them low, so that people can actually go out there and afford to buy these things. They're good consoles. You just got to get them out there and get in people's hands, and, you know, and then hope for the best. Maybe have some exclusive games, something that can impress people and get people back on board with Xbox. You know, we are in desperate need of, you know, competition in the console space. It is such a weird spot to be in right now, where there's no competition, and it's like so bad. You know, it's like, you know, I do think that we kind of, as gamers, maybe get used to, you know, we get a little bit, I guess, spoiled would be the word to it. But it's just so strange to me that, you know, this kind of stuff is happening the way that it's happening. So, you know, I hope that things happen and that change, and that, you know, Xbox can survive, and that we can continue to see, you know, Microsoft do some things that might change some things around or whatever. But, you know, again, hopefully, I hope that can be the case, and I hope that they can stick with, you know, something to change their fortunes, because it doesn't look like that's happening right now. But you guys might feel differently. How do you guys feel about this? It looks like PSSR 2.0 is opening up a wide gap between the Pro and the Series X. How do you guys feel about that? Definitely interested to see the thoughts and opinions across the board. I'll link this in the description. Let me know. Rack 'em up. Crap Gamer out.